In the summer of 2002, a routine patrol went silent in the mountains of Kandahar, Afghanistan. When a special forces unit was sent to investigate, they found the missing soldiers' equipment scattered outside a cave. What happened next would be classified at the highest levels. The soldiers claim they came face to face with something that shouldn't exist.
They found was this enormous humanoid who killed them all. Now, the giant had red hair. He had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. His feet were wrapped in like a crude canvas foot wrapping. And he was solid as a rock.
I've seen a lot of your content online, but the one that got me the most was absolutely the giant in Afghanistan, the Kandahar giant.
The story, as told by multiple anonymous sources, goes like this. A patrol unit fails to report in. Hours pass, radio silence. Commander dispatches an operational detachment Alpha, a 12-man special forces team to investigate.
They deployed another team to go look for that team. And when they found the cave, they found the traces of that other team.
What they find at the last known coordinates is disturbing. Weapons, gears, personal effects, but no soldiers, and leading into a large cave, drag marks.
And they came upon a cave because there was a nearby village, and the villagers were bringing food and other artifacts to the mouth of this cave. And so they thought that they're aiding and abetting the Taliban.
The team advances into the cave, and that's when they see him. According to the account of a military contractor known only as Mr. K, who claims he was part of the unit, the creature, according to the witnesses, was humanoid, approximately 13 feet tall, covered in matted red hair, wearing animal skins and leather moccasins, and it carried a weapon, a spear, primitive, deadly, and in the next instant, one soldier would be impaled. The team opened fire with everything they had: M4 carbines, semi-automatic recon rifles, at least one M107 Barrett, an anti-material rifle designed to destroy vehicles. For 30 seconds, they fired continuously. And finally, the giant fell.
They were actually putting their feet up to this guy's feet, this dead giant's feet, and seeing how small their feet were compared to his.
What happened next is where the story enters the realm of conspiracy. According to Mr. K, a Chinook helicopter was immediately dispatched.
In fact, the soldiers told the pilot that the giant was eating on members of the team who had killed previously. But these new guys, they took him down, and then they had a transport helicopter come in and airlift him to Bagram.
The body was loaded onto a specialized pallet and extracted to a military transport plane. The clip is from a pilot who called into Coast to Coast AM radio in December 2008. He claimed he personally flew cargo out of Afghanistan.
Well, I believed the pilot because he was a very credible guy. He didn't want his name out there. He didn't want fame or notoriety. He was very nervous. He thought there's a good chance that they're going to recognize me by my voice. He was on Coast to Coast AM, and then he's on in our documentary. There's a good chance I'm going to get recognized and there's going to be some reprisal. He was nervous. Now, they weighed the giant before they loaded him on the C-130, because they have to load everything that goes onto the C-130. The loadmaster weighed him. He weighed 1,100 pounds. And they estimated his height at 10 to 12 feet tall. And so they loaded him onto the C-130, and then they flew him to Qatar. And then they unloaded the cargo in Qatar. And our pilot told me he heard through the grapevine that the body ended up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He said, I don't know, that's just what I heard. So this is a first-hand account from the C-130 pilot who flew the body himself from Bagram Airfield to Qatar.
The soldiers, according to the story, were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. The incident was classified. The body disappeared. Destination unknown. Officially, it never happened. October 2001, the United States launches Operation Enduring Freedom. Within weeks, Special Forces teams are hunting Taliban and Al-Qaeda fighters across some of the most unforgiving terrain on Earth. Kandahar province, the Taliban's spiritual heartland, a region of mountain caves, ancient smuggling routes, and villages unchanged for centuries. The mountains here are honeycombed with caves, some natural, others carved by hand over thousands of years. The locals call them hiding places. The military calls them targets. But according to a story that circulated among veterans for 2 decades, one cave contained something far more dangerous than any insurgent. The Kandahar Giants story didn't emerge from a vacuum. It has a traceable origin point. November 2005, a man named Steve Quayle, an author who specialized in biblical prophecy and theories about ancient giants, appeared on Coast to Coast AM. He told listeners about an anonymous Air Force officer who claimed Marines in Afghanistan had stumbled upon a giant. The creature weighed over 1,000 pounds. The military killed it. The story was suppressed. In December 2008, Quayle returned to the show. This time, an anonymous pilot called in live. He claimed to personally transported the giant's body. Then, 8 years of silence. August 16, 2016, a self-described supernaturalist named L.A. Marzulli posted a YouTube video. In it, he interviewed a man he called Mr. K, allegedly a soldier who was there. This interview became the definitive version of the Kandahar giant story. The details that everyone now repeats, the red hair, the 6 fingers, the spear, the soldier named Dan, they all come from this single source. The video was eventually deleted, but it had already spread across the internet.
But the Kandahar giant, that story, a colleague of mine, L.A. Marzulli, he had another guy come to him, a different guy. We interviewed the pilot, Steve and I. L.A. had another guy come to him that was, I can't remember the details, he was a Special Forces guy. He had firsthand knowledge of the event as well. And we're not sure if it's the same one or a different one. If there was just one incident with the giants, or if there were multiple incidents. Now, years later...
Here's where it gets interesting. Every physical description of the Kandahar giant matches the description of beings called the Nephilim in the Hebrew Bible. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. 2 Samuel chapter 21, verse 20. There was a battle in Gath, where there was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He was descended from the Rephaim. The Bible describes these giants as having 6 fingers. The Kandahar giant allegedly had 6 fingers. The Bible places the giant in an ancient Middle East. Afghan is the ancient Middle East. For believers, this is proof. The Nephilim, the giants of old, never fully died out. They retreated to remote mountains, and the U.S. military encountered one.
If there really were a race of giants that survived, let's assume that what we're talking about is what's referenced in the Bible, right? Let's assume, or at least the Book of Enoch, right? The Nephilim, right? If we're talking about giants, the thing about giants is Native Americans have stories about red-headed giants. They talk about the same thing, about them having 6 fingers and 6 toes. They have these same myths. How is it that people from the Middle East and people from North America have this same ancient story? And what is it?
For skeptics, this is exactly the problem. In August 2016, the same month Marzulli's interview went viral, Snopes reached out to the Department of Defense. Their response was unambiguous. The Department of Defense has no record or information about a special forces member killed by a giant in Kandahar. No official army reports, no press releases, no named witnesses, no photographs, no physical remains, no evidence whatsoever.
And it's very difficult. The Pentagon actually released a statement some years ago, which is bizarre to me. You know, basically saying, in paraphrasing, the Kandahar giant incident never happened. There was never a giant that was killed in Afghanistan.
The Pentagon.
Yeah, it was a representative. It was like a spokesman from the Pentagon or something, or a release from the Pentagon.
Is this available online?
Yeah, they actually felt the need to debunk this.
That's hilarious.
Now,
that gets me sketchy.
There's one detail in Mr. K's account that researchers have been able to verify. He claimed a soldier named Dan was killed by the giant spear. According to U.S. Army records, only one service member named Dan or Daniel died in Kandahar in 2002. Sergeant First Class Daniel A. Romero, he was killed in a bomb blast. Not by a spear, not in a cave. He died alongside 3 other soldiers when confiscated explosive accidentally detonated. The story's central claim that a soldier named Dan was killed by a giant doesn't match any known casualty records. And this is the first time America has been captivated by a giant that turned out to be fiction. October 1869, workers digging a well in Cardiff, New York, uncovered a 10-foot petrified man. Newspapers went wild. Thousands paid to see it. Scientists debated whether it was an ancient biblical giant. It was a hoax. A tobacco farmer named George Hull had paid sculptors to carve it from gypsum. He buried it and discovered it a year later. Even P.T. Barnum tried to buy it. The Cardiff giant is still on display in Cooperstown, New York, a monument to America's appetite for the impossible. So is the Kandahar giant just the Kaldif giant of war on terror? What makes this story unusual is who's telling it. In 2024, author Timothy Albino appeared on Joe Rogan's Experience. He discussed the Kandahar giant and made an interesting observation.
What's interesting about it is the people that I've talked to that have been in Afghanistan, that were deployed in Afghanistan, not just Devin, but other people, they don't dismiss it. They say, we've heard some weird shit about that place.
Multiple veterans have claimed anonymously that the story circulated on the bases in Afghanistan. The commanders instructed soldiers to aim high without explanation. That the legend was treated as an open secret.
But it's not the giant of Kandahar, it's the giants of Kandahar. There's more than one. The military has known about it.
Of course, none of this is verified. Anonymous claims are not evidence. Memory is unreliable. Stories mutate in the retelling. But it raises a question: why do so many people want this story to be true? Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We find meaning in chaos. We see faces in clouds, monsters in shadows. When soldiers return from war zones with trauma and uncertainty, stories emerge. The Vietnam War had its own myths. Soldiers sworn they saw ghosts in the jungle, strange lights, unexplained events. War does something to the human mind. And Afghanistan is ancient, truly ancient. Civilization has risen and fallen in those mountains for 10,000 years. Caves that have never been explored, valleys where outsiders have never set foot.
What are those? Are they Greek or Roman? Those structures that are there that date the Greek. They look like Greek temples that date back to Alexander the Great, and archaeologists can't study them. They can't go there because it's too dangerous.
It's one of the most remote places on the planet, specifically because it's so dangerous. You can't just go strolling around Afghanistan.
In a place that old, that remote, that mysterious, it is really surprising that soldiers came home with stories of monsters. Here's what we know for certain. Steve Quayles first told this story on Coast to Coast AM in 2005. An anonymous pilot called in with additional details in 2008. L.A. Marzulli's 2016 interview with Mr. K became the definitive version. Every source is anonymous. No physical evidence has ever been produced. The Department of Defense denies any knowledge. The only verifiable soldier death in the story doesn't match the claimed circumstances. By every reasonable standard of evidence, the Kandahar giants is folklore, a modern myth born from war, religion, and the human need for wonder. And yet, stories persist for a reason. The Nephilim appears in texts across multiple religions. Giant skeletons, real ones of extinct megafauna, have been found throughout human history. Mountains of Afghanistan have never been fully explored. The military does classify information, soldiers do sign NDAs, cover-ups do happen. Does that mean a 13-foot red-haired giant with 6 fingers is hiding in a government warehouse somewhere?
A lot of different topics. I talk about a lot of UFO stuff, and I say some things that I know could get me in trouble, but nothing makes me more nervous than talking about giants, specifically the Kandahar giant and the giants in Kandahar.
Almost certainly not. But the next time you hear a veteran talk about Afghanistan, listen carefully, because in those ancient mountains where empires go to die, soldiers swear they saw something that shouldn't exist.